Thanks everyone for joining us. And we're so pleased to have Dr. Andrea Ortega with us today to talk about designing a bilingual fundraising strategy that serves the community. So thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. So I did this presentation maybe a couple months back, and I was reached out to possibly offer this for you all. And I'm so excited because um, this is something I'm very passionate about, as you can tell, or maybe not. I am Hispanic. I moved to the States, and they'll be Spanglish on here. But if you want me to translate anything, please let me know. So I moved to the States when I was 8 in Colombia. My family's safe. They actually were in the epicenter of the earthquake. So to get that out of the way, I've been getting a lot of questions. They are safe. I've been doing a lot of rapid response this week, actually, through the nonprofits that we work with. But I'm also like I thrive as a facilitator. Um, I do have a doctorate in public affairs and nonprofit management, but I don't. I worked in nonprofits for many years, but I think the expertise comes from everybody in the room. So I'm here to facilitate knowledge and get you guys to thinking about some new ideas. But I'd love for this to be a conversation where you unmute. You're welcome to challenge me. You're welcome to share your own experience. I have a consulting firm. I'm very, very blessed to have a team of a grant writer, a marketing, and we help support Hispanic-led works. There's a big power dynamic there too because we organize differently, we fundraise differently, our culture is differently on the way we give. So we're not used to the systematic, um, grants and philanthropy that exists. And so I kind of specialize on breaking the barriers around that. And with that, I bring a lot of this particular learnings from how I've applied it to some of the clients through their strategy. And we'll learn kind of why it's important, you know. I'll tell you that in a little bit, but I'd love to get just kind of a feel in the room. You can drop it in the chat or come off mute, but I love this question because um, and the next slide will tell you what I'm actually looking for. But I wonder if anybody can answer, kind of their field. And there's no wrong or right answer. As I'm told that the audience here, and there's a part of the NJ fundraising group, New Jersey fundraising group, you all come from many different levels and organizations, and fundraising does not look the same organization to organization. So definitely do that. So okay, Denise looks at data regularly. Kristen and Don, if you want to drop AB. All right. And then D, love it. Honestly, I get so many Ds. So the needs I already know you're going to share lots of stuff with me. Um, and it's mostly because, um, and it's also because we were a lot of, right? If you take a look at organizations that have long-standing donor stewardship programs, I like to think like, oh, you have a plan, um, like an endowment. Oh, you have a really well established fundraising, which takes years to build. You've had people who have been in that room who have known what to do with the data to get there. And so for those of you who may or may not, this is kind of the formula I give to a lot of the people I work with, which is really understanding what your donor looks like. And I do this for two reasons: to understand who you have, but to understand who there's room to cater to. And this is because there's lots of research that shows that women sometimes give more than male. That can also differ by sectors, by causes. So like really understanding sometimes what if our communications person has always been a woman and maybe the messaging has always catered to only one type of donor and things like that. And so I like people to really get an understanding of who they have in their pipeline, in their database, in their newsletters, and all that stuff. But where, like, once you decide that, if you know what your donors are, where is the gap? And I'd love, if someone wants to share out, like, um, do you know, can you fill in the sentence and share out with the team? And if not, have you recognized that, like, I get a lot of orgs who are like, A lot of even the well-established ones now, I've been hearing in a lot of my workshops this year that like, well, we're very well established, but our donors are dying out. We know that there's a generational shift come on. So there's also that conundrum. And Don did share that he knows that there's a decent number of Finnish people in the database, but haven't been tracked well. But I'm gonna shut up now. And I'd love like if someone wants to share, like if they can finish the sentence or if they've recognized the gap in their donor.
Hi, I'll comment only because I listed A, but it's kind of a with a little asterisk. I'm with Morris Park Alliance, which supports our county park commission. Many of our donors are one-off. However, what I do know about them is that yes, they are mostly female. Knowing Morris County and the fact that it is, I don't know, 70%, 68% white, that's probably also the bulk of my donors. And primary language of, again, the bulk of my donors is going to be English. And that's in a way why I'm here, because I do see that gap that the second largest, which of course is not large, but the second largest portion of our population here in Morris County is Hispanic, Latino, et cetera. And that's what I think I'm missing.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else want to share? Where I go next? You'll have to eventually. So go ahead, Don.
Hi there. This is great. I'm so glad you're doing this. Yeah, I work for the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference in fundraising, and our donors tend to skew a little heavier toward the male side, but not significantly. It's a very white audience, but we do know, especially the younger people who show up on trail runs and things like that, we're starting to get a lot more. People from Spanish-speaking people from Asia and that are showing up. So, it's our future for us to, be able to cater to those audiences.
I love it. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, I'm going to speak from the Hispanic experience, but I think you could take some of the learnings to at least try to discover what appeals to each audience, right? Um, and maybe even, as you begin your reach out, which I'll tell you some of the ways that I've done reach out, and maybe you can incorporate it in there. You might find people willing to help also with like, AI is an okay translator, but you also want to make sure that it's always reviewed by someone who understands. And so yeah, and that kind of brings me to my next slide. Um, does everybody recognize who this guy is and where this picture is from? It's from the Super Bowl. And language, I think, he got a lot of praise and hate for being the first one to perform in full Spanish, but I think it was also at the end of the day, people who embraced it, like they would sing the words or took advantage that there was going to be an all Spanish show to learn Spanish to be able to support. And so, I think it's really important that we appeal to both audiences. And one of the things that I think in fundraising, it's the emailing, it's the following up. But at the end of the day, I tell people like it's so much easier to open a for-profit business than to run a nonprofit. Because in a for-profit, there's an exchange of services and goods, and there's a clear transaction. And here, you're selling a mission. You're selling something that you do. Maybe there is a service component and an exchange of goods of some sorts for the community. But at the end of the day, you're basically like inflating it for that feeling, whether it's what the feeling that a hike gives, or being outdoors, or your commitment to the environment. Like that's also like a feeling. Not many people grow up believing in that or owning that. So you have to kind of appeal to it. And so, language really does matter. We're going to see some examples that it's not just translating it. You don't want to just translate a newsletter. You want to also use, and we know that there's bias in AI and stuff. So you want to also make sure like that you're using images that also like match and depict with it. And so I'm going to assume the answer here is no, you have not tried. I'm going to be honest, most of the clients I have, even though they're Hispanic led, have never tried it either. And that's where I come in because they also have very much of that one-time donation. And we know that I'd rather you become a recurring donor than only give when I'm like yelling SOS. Honestly, it's really, I think we forget to educate our donors around like sustainability starts with them too and their commitment. Like if you care about our mission, I'd rather you become a recurring donor than like only give because I sent you an email asking for money. And so, that also starts with like segmenting on your newsletter. So one of the first things I come into when I help with some of my clients, especially because I know they're Hispanic led, so I know that there's people that speak Spanish. And this is where I'm going to share a little bit about how I did it. Um, I literally presented myself as like, hey, I'm the new development director for blah blah blah. Could you fill out this form and update your profile or schedule a 15-minute call with me? And in that, it was a quick form. It was like, what's your uh, email nickname, and then preference in language. And then I think I added your birthday because I want to start celebrating people's birthdays, at least the month and day. Um, but I was using the question of the method to update and segment on my newsletter that we're going to continue to give out. And so that's one of the ways that I've done it with my clients. And then of course, 62 million people that speak Spanish. It's growing. Those people are going to make babies. Their babies are going to make babies. And, I think the Spanish language is not going anywhere. Um, and interestingly enough, I tell people too that it's not just about Spanish and English. Like I personally would love to receive a Spanglish newsletter because that appeals to me as a migrant. Like putting a little word there, see, like if you're not ready to fully commit to a newsletter, because maybe you only have two people that chose Spanish and like the rest of them, and we'll talk. I always go ahead of my slides. We'll go into the activities, but like, something that you can try is even dropping a Spanish word in the subject line and seeing which one has a higher open rate. I don't know what tools you use, but I know Constant Contact. I use Beehive for the newsletters. They allow you to run A/B testing on the subject lines. So that's a good way to start just like seeing what kind of stuff gives. And this slide just kind of there to tell you that it's gonna happen regardless, which as some of you have shared. And then, you know, especially in the environment and the hiking, I think there is a huge growing trend, even within Hispanics, to connect back to nature, to connect back to planet. And I think even more so now with everything that's going on in the political climate, I think people also find that that becomes a sort of therapy for them. There are two funders that I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but we are Justice Outside. They also um, they they give to organizations who help promote going outside, going outdoors. And so like all those kind of things is something that is also starting to appeal to Hispanics. And then basically also like building that trust, right? To Denise and Don, I'm going to assume you're white. And you definitely, and so uh, you can come from an ally perspective. You can definitely ask questions before kind of jumping into it and pretending to write a newsletter. I think it begins with just a simple question. Hey, we're thinking of ways to really cater, our communications to you. And then from there, decide based on the data, how far you want to take it. And something that really worked with the 15-minute calls, which I was very scared. I was very scared to say, I thought this was going out to like 4,000 people. So I'm glad that only like 3 or 4 took it, but the 3 or 4 who took the 15-minute call, I was able to learn a lot. I was able to learn a lot about why they even joined the org, what they wanted their preferences to be, what makes them a supporter of the organization. And so um, I was really shocked, that first I thought I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have 4,000 appointments. No. But then also the ones who did commit to meeting with me gave me a lot of information to help me cater what my communication messaging was going to be for my fundraising campaigns. Oh, and let me be clear if I haven't said, I don't send thought leadership. There's a program and a communications team with most of my clients. when I talk about communications, it's only for fundraising. It's either for campaigns, for donor stewardship, or points. So if you hear me talking about, just know that it's always catered to going back to our fundraising campaigns. Um, and so, there's also some assumptions and evidence, and I want to make sure that I think I touched on this a little bit, but like not just translating, but also having someone that looks like it. Like, I don't even know if this is just, at first I thought this is a good example, but this is my third time doing this presentation. And I'm always like, man, I would have loved to see more like tropical fruit and like American cheese, like we don't need that, you guys. Like that craft American, like so that's why it's also important to get input. And maybe in those 15-minute calls, if you find that someone's really excited, like I can't believe you guys are gonna test Spanish communications, maybe like would you be okay if I send you the first draft and get a blessing from someone? Like you're allowed to ask for help. I think if anything shows is that Hispanics or anybody likes representation. So, I would take it as an honor if you sent to me to review something that you're gonna do because you want, for more people to see themselves in your campaigns. Um, but so this campaign actually, and I can share if you want to Google, they did a whole bilingual campaign, and this is a case study for Feeding America. And again, in the first, I was like, oh, this is cool. The case study showed really like awesome stats on what their feedback was and everything. But now that I think about it, like I would have gone a step further with what's the food that was being displayed, like the imaging. And so um, just just something to think about and just to kind of see what this looks like in practice. Any questions so far? You're good. He's shaking the head. So okay. So, you are all fundraisers. So again, I'm just here to facilitate, and I like to think of myself as like getting your creative juices flowing, to see how you're gonna try this, when you go back to work or tomorrow or in the next couple of months or weeks. But this is the reason why if you're not ready to do a full newsletter in Spanish or test it, like try with the subject line, something that's relevant. Make sure that you have someone okay with it because words do mean different. The other challenge that you might have is that Colombian Spanish is different than Argentinian Spanish. Argentinian Spanish is different than Mexican Spanish. So like I said, like I'm not saying you have to ask for like what ethnicity specifically, but I am saying like try to use generalized words. And then get to know like how that reflects with the people. So if you do find someone who is willing to review your messaging, definitely do that. But I think the subject line is a perfect place to start. And if you want to end with a call out, like in my signature, I always have abrazos and it means hugs. And I don't really care if you understand it or not. Maybe you'll use Google Translator, but like that's just a part of my identity. And I think it really resonates with my clients and people I have to talk to on a daily basis. And yeah, and so if you let's say you have a donor who's gone for years and they've never seen you saying like El Planeta welcomes you, like the planet is ready for you or something. Like if there's something that you can gauge them in there, they might be like, wow, this is cool, this is new, and this is different. And they're inviting me to the space that you have. And so one of the other things I wanted to talk about that I myself have been even testing out with Bilingual, giving in all of the fundraisers I've created this past. I would say the bilingual fundraising for me has been more in the last 2 to 3 years. I think there's been an uptick in people embracing, this more in, I think we've always embraced it. I think we're also trying to formalize it both in our workplace and the way that we interact with each other. So I've run some campaigns, and I also wanted to, and this actually research comes from also the English language, the difference between putting donate today or give water today. So being really specifically about the ask and adding that emotion. It's really interesting because I tell people I think in English. I came here when I was very young. I read in English. I speak in English. But if I'm very passionate, I yell in Spanish. I scream at my kids in Spanish. I scream at my husband in Spanish. Like Spanish is a very passionate language. It sounds it sounds angrier when it's supposed to be angrier. Or at least that's how we feel. Like, oh, she's then my name in Spanish, like my whole name, like, you know. So it's kind of like when we're trying to send these kind of messaging and invite people either to a space or to donate, we can invoke emotion through that. And so I have some examples. Um, I don't think you guys might get this reference, but these are like, this is from a telenovela. So this is from a soap opera. And so it says things of money in Spanish, but this is actually a very famous actress. And so I started adding some of these GIFs that are recognized even in our I don't know what platform you guys use, but we use gift butter for some of my clients, and you're allowed to thank them publicly on the landing page. And so we've been replying with like GIFs from different types of Hispanic eras. And it's been really interesting to see the reaction from people on there. So you'll see some of these. If you have any questions, please ask me. I'd love to share, but this is from a telenovela. And you see, even like that looks so dramatic. Like she's this beautiful woman looking very dramatic. So just a little portion there about bilingual messaging. Um, you don't need a fancy platform to start. You can use the current tools that you use. If they don't have like an A/B testing, then just you yourself segment based on whatever you can, and then try it with two of them, and then you can see which one has a higher open rate. If you've never tried Beehive, I love their A/B testing feature because Beehive allows you to send the first 30%, get which subject line opened the most within the first hour or within the first 30% hits, and then it'll send it out with the one with the highest open rate on its own. So I'll set it up like oh, um give me an hour to see the open rate at 30%, and then it's emails to the first 30%. After the hour it reassesses which subject line had the most open, and then it sends it out to everybody with the correct one. Constant Contact, I think, has a just a regular AB one, but start using some of that data to kind of decide what you want to do. Um, and then and then some examples, right? So this is the English one, very simple. Like we've moved on from the donate today, gift today, which are you can still use. I still use them every once in a while and kind of makes sense. But in my and I do use donate today a lot on social media, specifically to newsletters, which I want newsletters to sound more personal. I'll sign off with my name, not just like my title signature. I'll pick a line that really defines me. I would ask them this for my personal, but for each org, I'll pick something that really defines the org. And then I've been using a lot of like the if we're doing like a heat stress campaign, gift water today, and then it explains what we're doing. I know you've seen these with like plant a flower or help something. So like if I usually like go back to read what my ask is, and then if I find a way to match it to some kind of verb there, that's what I'll make the button out. Any questions so far? Oh, and here's the one in Spanish. So dona hoy, dale agua hoy. So any questions so far in the chat? Okay, cool. If you're also like having some ideas, I'd love to stop the presentation. I'd love to go through them with you. One of the other things is that in the Spanish language, giving itself is very different, right? So I think I opened my call with like giving for us, and actually many Hispanic organizations don't even pay themselves. A lot of them are very volunteer ran because giving in our countries is very different here. Like the nonprofits in Latin America are usually funded. Like they don't have the same 501(c)(3) status that we do. They're usually funded by government. They're like the term NGO is actually very much used across Latin America. They're government organizations and they don't have a pathway to tax exemption like we do, right? So if you think about NPOs here in Latin America, it's mostly like NGOs, and most of them receive their funding through large corporate institutions or government. The individual giving obviously has increased through the years, and it's kind of been trying to mimic more of the system that exists in the US. But giving for us in foundations is very different. Actually, if you were to see, I used to form nonprofits or 501(c)(3)s almost every Hispanic would call themselves fundación, which directly translates to foundation. And we know that foundations in the US are usually grant makers. They're usually private foundations who give money versus Spanish speakers will sometimes relate foundations to nonprofits and to operate that way. Um, and so, the language is also different, right? Like we have very specific language when we apply to grants, the way we talk to a funder around outcomes and things like that. So it doesn't translate emotionally the way to Spanish. So that's why if you decide to maybe like, if you're scared, maybe your listserv is like 100,000 people and you're scared to send a 15-minute call, maybe randomly select like 20 emails and see if they'll meet with you and just kind of ask them like, do you prefer, what is your preference, and start kind of testing what that looks like. And then I always ask the questions like, why did you give that day? Even if it was a one-time donation, or why did you visit the organization, or what made you do that? And then from there, like, actually, that was the question that when I did the calls, I learned so much more. I learned that they had been, you know, volunteered with the organization many years ago and they know how they work. And so they continue to support it. And then I learned that one of them always gives like money through their business. So it's an interesting journey when you kind of like ask for help from people and then you understand. And then so yeah, you'll be able to also tap into their emotions, right? Like if you start having these calls and you start seeing, oh, most of them gave only because they visited and they had a great time with their family. Great. Maybe you should start using more family language around the way that you communicate. Maybe now that you know that there's diversity, like what are the images am I using and portraying? And this can also translate to social media, right? Making sure that if you're going to use stock photos or anything like that, that you're also doing it in representation of people. Um, and so, yeah. And so, just something really important around the way we do emotion. Um, the other thing is that, um, you know, I have this slide because I work with. This is actually the first workshop was more into like social media comms people, and in the intersection. But if you have data on the back end, and maybe while I'm speaking, you guys can drop in the chat. What is your tool of sending this? Whether you use donor box, like how do you communicate with your donors? That way, I can see how I can maybe tailor this slide a little bit more to you, but. Um, Once you decide what's going to be your measure of success, like making sure that you're actually tracking that. And in the calls that I've had with some of the donors, some of them are like, oh, I'm not really a donor, but I am a supporter. And so I learned that they really are interested in volunteering and doing all this. And they even drop names of people, but I know who could donate to you. And so being able to kind of segment that on the back end is also really helpful. Um, and the goal isn't also to build, oh, we only track this, but it's to understanding, and this is for you, like you're a fundraising or your organization, and we're always measured by the money that we bring in, right? But also being able to show the awareness portion of it, right? Like, look, this campaign only raised 5,000 compared to the other one, but look at how many people we had in our click-through rates and how many opened or how many booked a call with me. So we had less, but then we had more people book a call with me or shared it out with somebody. So I think a lot of those things are important. Um, okay. Any questions so far about A/B testing, about what this looks like? What tools do you currently use?
I will say that I personally, for the Park Alliance, I'm the only staff person, like half of me,
Oh,
technically.
yes.
Half of me belongs to the Park Commission and half of me belongs to the Alliance. I do not have a mass email program.
Mm.
I actually just sent out a donor newsletter and it was about for the last year, maybe 120 that was taking out our golfers and, some corporate folks and
Mm.
things like that. But I do have access periodically for like a special thing to use the Park Commission's weekly newsletter, and that's
Ooh.
Constant Contact. So I
Nice.
actually already wrote down that our marketing office should try the A/B testing.
Yeah, yeah. And do you know, so you're saying that your current listserv, you only have access to 120 people to reach out
Yeah, just
to?
about 120, and it's all manual. It's not even a listserv. It's just, oh, okay, break out these people. I only have their email address, and these people over
Hmm.
here, I have their snail mail address. And that
Do
was
you,
about 120.
do you not have a mass emailing because there's no budget for it, or you just,
I think possibly just because of the number of donors we have.
hmm.
Um, it's like I said, if I was going to do email, it might have been 52 people this last
Right.
round. So
Yeah.
I just think the number's not there. But to
Hmm.
access the Park Commission's weekly newsletter, like our golf outing's coming up in September. So I
Hmm.
said to the executive director, can I put a notice about the golf outing in the Park Commission's newsletter? That goes to
Yeah.
28,000 people. So it would be
Wow.
really interesting to see, maybe not necessarily from a fundraising perspective, but to maybe make some little adjustments and do an A/B test through Constant Contact and see what, because
Yes.
I oversee the marketing office here. So it's very interesting to me, to see
Yeah.
what people are opening, what are the words we're using and the subject line, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I love that. And then so I really should get a referral partner. But if you have a chance to also even, so Monday.com is free for nonprofits and it gives you
Hmm.
10 seats. Now I have a love-hate relationship with Monday because it can really overwhelm you with all the things that it can do. But
Hmm.
at the least, what you can probably do, Denise, is you can email from Monday. So you could literally segment in there in just a quick like column of first name, last name, language preference, month and date. Like that's how I have it set up on the back end for some of my smaller orgs.
Mm.
Um, but then you can create a form. And so maybe the per commission would once a year let you be like, are you interested in learning more about this specific area? And maybe they'll let you have them sign up for your specific listserv
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see if you can get more. And then, or maybe they can create, they also can create a form in constant contact. And that way you have, but I think, you do need a little bit of direct access to the people in your local vicinity.
Mhm.
That's usually very helpful. I didn't talk about this here, but people also like to give locally or back at home. It's a big part of giving and donor behavior.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah. And then something that I like to point out, which I think we as a sector have thankfully graduated from, but it wasn't too long ago when we sorry, just going back to the slide. But you're great, Denise. Thank you for sharing. If
Mhm.
anybody wants to share, please come off me up. Making sure that in your imaging to trauma, like we don't do the whole crying kid anymore. Like, we really need to be respectful of the people that we serve and the people that we help. And then obviously, because I think we're all environmentalists or work with some kind of environment, obviously trauma looks a little different for you with Earth and everything that we're doing in nature. But yeah, so this one specifically to like images of children and not appropriate and things like that. And then identity as a lever, like I would say like not this is why it's important to like have someone who understands the culture, maybe vet it or someone that you speak to. And then weaponizing anything for clicks. I think we've come a long way in the last couple of years with the way that we communicate to our donors and present ourselves. Um, because also like, it helped reinforce the bias that like, oh, minorities are this and that. And, we're kind of shying away from that. If we're going to use the Spanish language, it's because we're there to empower the community and the people that we serve. So just kind of wanted to call off that. And then responsible testing also like if you're gonna commit, if you're gonna commit to a word, try not to just do it once and be like, oh, nobody opened it. No, like, you're gonna have to try it. If it didn't work in the subject line, um, send a long email, like English in the top, Spanish in the bottom. If you want to receive one language, select here your preference method of communication, right? Like you can also kind of force people's hand into understanding that you're trying to be more inclusive and representation. And then be honest. when I sent the email to like a 4,000 listservs, I was honest. I was like, "Hey, I'm the new development person here, and I just want to get to know all of you. And I'm curious to know if you guys are actually interested in receiving some communications in Spanish." Like, that's it, you know? And from there, that's when I got the calls and the bookings and people updating their profile. And I did use Monday.com for the donor profile update because I already had a database, but um, I didn't know how to use it. So maybe it was just easy to use the Monday forms. But and I was able to update, what their preferences are by just uploading it into that. And so I want to kind of move forward, and I want to make sure we kind of either go around the room or in the chat and talk about how you would design something or what your ideas are flowing. Because I want this to be a conversation where, and we have 20 minutes, so I think we're right on time. I have a couple more slides and then we can finish. But I want, if you've been taking notes and if you've been like doing anything, like what would you design after this call or what would you test? So that maybe you can use some of my insight as a as a checks and balances of sort. And while you guys were thinking, because if not, I will call you and I will call on you. I can probably share some examples, but give me a second. I can probably share some examples of some of the emails I sent if I find them. Let me stop sharing really quick. So Denise, you said you're going to try the A/B testing or tell the marketing team to do that. John, do you have any idea how you think you're going to implement the language? And I'm going to show some examples, I promise.
So we have a communications director who is a lot closer to that than me, but what I'm starting to
Mm-hmm.
type right now, and I'll just say it out loud then, is that we're trying to get the basic message out that as a trail organization, that the trails and nature belong to everyone, meaning
Ooh,
families, people of all ages,
love
all
that.
ethnicities, and we want to try and test that and see what works there.
Yeah, you know what? I think it'll be helpful if I show you the email I'm talking about. That way you don't think I'm like, what is this girl saying? Um, and interestingly enough, I also I'm a little like ask for forgiveness. What's the saying? Like
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, ask for forgiveness, not
yeah.
permission.
Yeah. And the World Cup was on. So I used that and Hispanics, like people didn't go to work for the World Cup. Like we love soccer. So this was the email that I used. And so it was like, I know the World Cup is on. And I think I shortened this. This is the test. I don't know where the final one is, but it's something like that. And I just kind of introduced myself that I wanted to get to know them. And I was like, fill out a short form or book a 15-minute call with them. I did add a swag bag for the first 30 days, the first 30, because we just rolled out a logo. So we put the logo in some of the new materials. So actually there was like, I killed like three birds in one stone because there was like three things going on. I wanted to meet them, I wanted to update the profile, and I wanted to introduce the new logo. Um,
Yeah, that looks fun.
and yeah, and oh my God, the girl who won, this is an organization in Florida and she lives in Massachusetts and she's like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I've been a supporter for many years. Like, I can't believe I won the flag bag. And it's just, kind of building that momentum with the people. And I just told the truth. I said, I'm new here. I want to get to know you. Let me know, when we can have a little chat. And yeah. And then and then I signed off in English and Spanish, like con todo mi amor, with all of my love. And I started dropping hints in there. And then if you go to the form, I'll show you the form as well. Um, yeah, I kind of just asked, I put the form in English and Spanish. And I just kind of make sure to like ask them what they wanted, and not everything was required. Um, but they could pick whatever language they speak. And I did add Creole because this particular organization does it. But yeah, I'm not writing a Creole newsletter. I need a person, but at least now we know. Or I could validate, like, hey, we have enough. Right now, I could go back to the executive director, like 25% of our people chose Creole. Like, we should invest in ABCD, like translation. I'm very, like, if I'm going to ask for something, I'm very data driven and I want to validate the work that we're doing. All right. Who else wants to go, Don? And yes, honestly, like when you said that, like my heart like pounded. I was like, I love that. I love that slogan. I know I focused a lot on comms. So is there another aspect of fundraising that you're more curious about how I've applied this?
I would just
Just
wonder, and I don't mean to generalize, but I would just
Yeah.
wonder about the social media aspect of it and how we, how we could incorporate working with people
Yeah.
whose English is not their primary language.
Yeah.
And there might be so many and things like that, but any um experience you have with working in the
Yeah.
media area.
I can tell you my own experience was, and I'll be full honest, like when I became a consultant because I was laid off 6 months pregnant with my third child from the tech space. I was in a tech startup that worked for nonprofits. And I remember being like, who needs another nonprofit consultant? But the reason I've been successful is because I decided at that moment that it was going to be niche, that I was going to be the first like bilingual Hispanic kind of like leading nonprofit consultant. And when I say Denise, that if you type Hispanic nonprofit consultant, I'm probably one of the top, like in both the messaging and SEO, the way I position myself. Um, and so even I struggled with that identity. I'm speaking from experience here. Like I told you in the beginning, I speak in English. I consider like Spanish is my first language, but I moved here so young and I went through the education system here, like even learned to read first in English, like that. Um, when I just started social media marketing for Palante for the firm, I did it in English. And I very quickly realized, like, why is my numbers not growing? Why is it not? And I realized that, like, I tell people, like, I got all my clients from word of mouth, not from social. Social is something I did to just like stay in there. And so, um, about 6 months ago, we made the pivot to posting first in Spanish and then making English like the next slide or the caption in the comments. And my social media has significantly also grown. And so obviously for your organizations, Spanish might be the second choice. But one of the things I found is like you can always do English. You can use the carousel kind of version to post them in all the language. And then, your caption should be the main one, but then in the comments you can post the translation. And those are some of the practical things that I myself have learned that worked, and we've applied that to organizations. If the organization is Hispanic first, where we know the demographics, right? Going back to that first sentence, like we know the demographics of the people, and Facebook tells us. Facebook will tell us what the demographics are of the people in our socials. Like I can show you another one. And so um, we know the demographics, then we're able to kind of decide if we should be English first or Spanish first, but still posting in both language because the idea is to show representation, not like replacement, right? Like we're showing that we can have more than one language in one post, which we can. So that's some of the ways that I did it. So let me see if I can pull up. The other ways that we've tried is like if I post because you also don't want to bombard your socials, right? So if I posted something in English, like on my feed, then I'll make the story the translation or vice versa. So like there's different ways that you can play around with it. Mhm. Any other questions, Denise?
No, thank you. The demographics of Morris County, as I said, are primarily white. Um, and the second population would be Hispanic and Latino. Um, So I think we
Yeah.
need to get a little bit better, both from our nonprofit and fundraising perspective, but even from the
Hmm.
park commission's perspective. Um, a long
Yeah.
time ago, I had a friend do our, like, how do you make a reservation to use a park site? I had a friend interpret that for us into Spanish. And
Mm.
I just think we need to do that a little bit more. We need to, help people understand how to use their parks, what's available. And then the nonprofit might benefit from that, right? That there might be donors who then go out and use the parks and find out about our nonprofit. So yeah, I think we
Yeah,
need to do a little bit of a better job.
absolutely. And um I think also even like if we didn't talk about you know maybe using events to get people, but like you can partner with local organizations who already do that. Like I know in Florida it's called Nuestro Cultura Outdoors. And all she does is take Hispanic people out on trails
Mhm.
and outdoors. So maybe also even tapping into those small groups that are beginning to form, um, and seeing how how they can get more people interested in the organization.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I can. Let me see if I can show you one really quick. I'll show you one really quick and then I'll shut up. But this is the same org, and this is one of my biggest clients. But they're the ones that we've been doing a lot of the bilingual testing. And so this is the English post of it, right? And it had like 18 likes, I think, something like that. But then this one had 15 likes, but it had like a comment, even though it looks like a bot. But like, so we're continuing to see how both of them do, right? And the language and testing it. And um, so yeah. Yeah. What else do I have in the slides? The last thing I have is just commit to a bilingual test or some way of that you could I'll say this. To one way to commit to doing something in the next 30 days. I'd love to look at it if you want me to. You guys, we were a small group today, so Denise, if you want me to look at it, I'd love to. I think I'd love to see the results of what you do. And then can I ask you guys a question? Do you recognize this GIF or this like image? Have you guys ever seen this before?
No.
No, that's so funny.
No.
It's from a Brazilian telenovela, and I thought for the longest it was like a Hispanic telenovela, but it's a Brazilian telenovela. But I've seen it everywhere, and I had no idea that it came from our culture. So, anyways,
Oh.
this is just to say, are there any questions? She looks very confused, and there's algebra all over it. So, are you confused about anything? And are there any questions?
No, this has been given me certainly so much to think about.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much.
awesome. Hi,
Hey,
Lauren. You made
Lauren.
it.
I did. Thank you. Wow, that last photo, I was like, ooh, we're talking about algebra? Ooh. Uh-oh. I'm in
Fortunately,
trouble.
Yeah.
no.
Good, good.
No. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to
Um,
watching the recording.
Yeah, I hope it was interesting. Yeah, like I said, Denise, if you want to share Don, Gabrielle or one, if anybody, I'd love to look at what they're going to be testing. Or feel free to add my email to that listserv. I always love receiving things, and um, I think it's important to put, representation so that everybody can feel seen and can be invited into our space. And I didn't have it in this slide, which now that I do this presentation again, it's probably important to talk about the generation shift that's happening. And so one of the ways to attract new donors is going to be by appealing to the people the children of our donors or the people with the transfer of money that's happening in the next coming years.
Yep.
Um, and cool. All right. Well, there's a workshop coming. It's good.
Definitely food for thought. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank
I've gotten
you.
like, okay, what about this? What about this? Should I do that? Yeah, so yeah, that's always a good sign for me is when I've got all these different possibilities after a meeting. So thank you.
Okay, awesome.